The Dene people once grazed sheep over vast distances on a rotational basis that allowed the land to recover and in some ways benefit from the grazing livestock. A wide diversity of native plants and grasses thrived in harmony and balance with the pastoral lifestyle of the Dene. When the boundaries of the Navajo reservation were established, greatly reducing the area for raising livestock, traditional grazing practices were disrupted along with other social and economic impacts. The lifeway connection of the Dene to Mother Earth was beginning to break down. Problems of soil erosion, flooding, drought, and loss of biodiversity began to appear as the fertility and productivity of the land declined. And at the same time, the health of the Dene people began to decline, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Diabetes, heart disease, alcoholism, and domestic violence arose and began to increase.
The large, deep root systems of native plants promote the development of rich soil with high organic content and create spaces in the ground for rainwater to infiltrate. Similar to a sponge, the ground around native plants is able to absorb stormwater with minimal runoff. Healthy soil supporting many different native plant species greatly reduces floodwater and enables the land to store that precious water underground in aquifers. These natural water storage tanks release their water gradually, supplying springs and creeks with a steady year-round flow of water, essential for farming and for abundant wildlife. Native plants reconnect us to the place where we live. They are a major part of our cultural heritage. Our ancestors depended on many of these plants for food, medicine, and materials for making tools, clothes, household items, and shelter. Native plants are beautiful and easy to care for in the landscape around our homes, schools, and places where we work. They are adapted to the environmental conditions where we live and establish cooperative relationships with other native plants and native wildlife as integral parts of the local ecosystem. And as such, they help strengthen and hold the web of life together. Earth's biosphere is made up of many interconnected ecosystems, and within each ecosystem exists a web of relationships that hold the ecosystem together in balance and harmony as a functional part of life on Earth. In the process of building topsoil, native plants remove carbon dioxide from the air and use the carbon to create organic matter in the soil. In this way, they help to restore balance to Earth's atmosphere. Zones of native plants that create habitats for birds and pollinating insects and act as windbreaks have many benefits for small-scale farming. When birds find good trees for nesting and abundant food such as berries and seeds of native plants, they move in and settle down. But their favorite food are the insects, such as grasshoppers, that can be a problem for our farm crops. If hummingbirds find abundant nectar-producing wildflowers and suitable nesting places, they will stay around us. Hummingbirds need the sweet nectar from native plants to fuel their little helicopter motors, but protein-rich mosquitoes and other small flying insects is the food that sustains them. It takes time for native plants to establish themselves and develop the root systems that will restore the soil and absorb rainwater. To begin the process, we need to find other ways to enable the land to absorb rainwater. We can create places for rainwater to accumulate and have more time to soak into the ground. Adding compost to the soil jumpstarts the soil's ability to absorb water. So does adding mulch to the surface of the soil. Compost is organic matter that is mostly decomposed and is readily available for the plants to use for food. Mulch has more carbon-containing material and is not completely broken down or decomposed, such as wood chips, dried leaves, bark, chopped up corn stalks, or straw. Mulch is applied to the surface of the soil to help retain moisture and reduce the impacts of raindrops on the soil surface. Mulch can also reduce problems with weeds. Compost could be applied to the surface but is very often mixed into the soil. When doing so will not disturb the plant's root system. On hillsides or anywhere the land is not completely flat, water tends to flow downhill. We can create basins and berms for places where water can puddle up and soak into the ground. These are the perfect spots for our native trees and shrubs to be planted. With thoughtful planning based on observation, research about the needs and preferences of specific native plant species, work, and time, we can create natural beauty and abundance all around us. In working together with Mother Earth, it is helpful to have some observational scientific understanding of the natural processes occurring all around us, and especially, literally, right under our feet. Indigenous knowledge of life on Earth was strongly based in observational science. Life in the soil is a complex web of relationships between an amazing diversity of living creatures all working together and supporting the life we see above ground. Soil is formed from rocky material that, over a long period of time, has broken apart into the tiny particles we call sand, silt, and clay. Healthy soil also contains organic material, which is decomposed remains of living plants and animals and a diversity of living microorganisms such as bacteria and fungus. Soil provides water and nutrients for plant growth and is a place for the plants to anchor their roots and support their growth above ground upwards towards the sun. Soil contains varying amounts of air and water. Soil that is ideal for plant growth typically is made up of 50% solid material and 50% open pore space where water and air can move in and out. The mineral materials sand, silt, and clay makes up about 47 to 49% of the total volume, with 1 to 3% organic matter making up the remainder of solid material. Here are some physical properties of soil. Color. Lighter colors indicate a low amount of organic matter, and darker colors usually indicate a larger amount of organic matter. Bright red and brown colors indicate well-drained conditions that allow for the free movement of air and water through the soil, resulting in the oxidation of the mineral element iron. Yellow-colored subsoil usually indicates some difficulty with drainage. Texture. Texture is determined by the various percentages of sand, silt, and clay in the soil. Even though these particles are made up of the same rocky material, their different sizes and percentages create very different soil characteristics. The largest of these particles is sand. Most sand particles can be seen without a magnifying glass and feel gritty when rubbed between the thumb and fingers. Medium-sized soil particles that feel smooth and floury are called silt. When wet, silt feels smooth but not slick or sticky. When dry, it is smooth and floury. Silt particles are so small that an individual particle cannot be seen by the unaided eye. Clay is the finest soil particle and can be only seen with the aid of a very powerful microscope. When particles break apart into such tiny pieces, they tend to become platelet-shaped and stick together the way sheets of wet paper stick together. They feel extremely smooth when dry, become slick and sticky when wet, and will hold their form when molded. Soils high in clay content often show pronounced surface cracking when dried. Loam soils exhibit properties of sand, silt, and clay in approximately equal portions. Sandy loam soils vary from very fine to very coarse and feel quite sandy or gritty. The amount of silt and clay is sufficient to hold the soil together when moist. Silt loam soils feel quite smooth and floury when rubbed between the thumb and fingers. Clay loam soils are smooth when dry and slick or sticky when wet. Silt and sand are present in noticeable amounts in this texture class but are overshadowed by clay. Structure. Soil particles tend to clump together to form structural units called aggregates that vary in shape and size depending on soil texture and other factors, including the type of agricultural practices that have been applied to the soil in the past. Percolation. Percolation is the ability for water to move through the soil. Soil texture and structure determine the rate of percolation. To test soil percolation, dig a hole approximately 1 foot across and 1.5 feet deep. Fill the hole with water, let the soil absorb the water for 1 to 2 hours, then fill it again with water. The hole should drain within 24 hours. If not, then plants should not be planted in that location unless action is taken to improve drainage.
Native plants can be our guides back to Hauser and help us restore our connection to Mother Earth. We can learn how to heal the land and heal ourselves and return to the beauty and the abundance that was the unspoiled land of our ancestors.